Well, Glenda Daniels, Associate Professor of Media Studies at Wits University and Sanef's Gauteng convenor, has written an opinion piece about the upcoming elections and the media. Now, she says media and journalism will be attacked in the run-up to the 2024 polls as parties fight for votes, as well as the limelight. Daniels joining us via Zoom this morning, and thank you so much, Professor Glenda Daniels, for joining us. Good morning to you. It's almost as if you saw this coming. I mean, this very morning during a conversation between my colleague Sweetie Jones and Al-Jamaa leader Sanef Hendricks, the exact sentiments were shared. The Al-Jamaa leader says the media is assisting the DA in a narrative, I suppose, to discredit newly Johannesburg mayor, that's Kabelo Kwamana, regarding these, scam and fraud allegations we're hearing. But is this what should be expected ahead of next year's elections?
Yes, hi Tamela. So indeed, this is this is what happens every single year, every single time there's an election, when political parties want particular coverage that's good. And then as soon as they see any kind of criticism of themselves, then they accuse you of supporting another party. It's just the way it is. It's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And what media need to do is actually just to point out that all parties need to be criticized and to be held accountable.
What about the other side of the coin, Prof, in an instance where the media is equally criticized for, or even, different political parties for this strategy that when it's election times, suddenly scandals come out, suddenly people's, secrets or whatever scams they've been, involved in allegedly do come out. Can the media equally be used, I suppose, by political parties to almost push an agenda to discredit other parties?
Yes, of course the media can be used, and of course, media is often led up the garden path because anything sensational sells. But if you think about the South African media, there are lots of scandals to report on, there's lots of corruption to report on, but also there's also very good media in the country, because if it wasn't the case, South Africa wouldn't have gone up by 10 spots in the World Press Freedom Stakes. One of the reasons why in the world most countries have actually gone down is because of trust in media and because of fake news, which encompasses propaganda, disinformation, misinformation, and so forth, malicious disinformation. So South Africa is not, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist and it mustn't be pointed out. South Africa hasn't actually gone up in that regard, which means we have, by and large, a media that's trustworthy. And here and there, we have pockets of media that get pulled in a factionalism, various factionalism battles within the ruling party itself, and in other words, intra-party and between parties.
Do you think that during this time we'll also see more and more political parties making use of their own social media platforms as opposed to going mainstream? This to obviously garner more support, hoping to get more votes. Will there be a trust deficit during this time, but more of a shift to them relying on their own social media pages to almost communicate with their supporters?
Well, I think social media must be used, and it's normal to use social media. It's part of our lives today. But when mainstream journalists see what's on social media, they're meant to interrogate it. The parties that use social media will be the parties that get their messages out, more to their supporters. But one mustn't also forget that not everybody's on social media. And social media will contain lots of things that need to be examined, interrogated, scrutinized. It can't all just be true that this is how many supporters your party has and this is what your party is doing. But you'll see it on social media because parties also do need to promote themselves. And the jobs of journalism and journalists is to actually go out and verify and check, double check, cross check and then you find out more. Like, you know, the new mayor of Johannesburg, if it wasn't for a journalist who went and checked certain facts about when he got his law degree or whatever degree it was meant to be, when he was born, you know, those are important things to do. In fact, a local government's supposed to be doing that when they interview people for jobs, to actually verify that that's your correct information. And then when they don't do it, that's what, well, even when they do it, journalists are meant to go and check that it's actually truthful and correct information. Because that's what we do. That's what media does. It's supposed to be conduits of reliable information to the public, and not to be taking sides that, you know, we support Action SA or the IFP or the DA or the EFF or whatever. It's actually to be interrogating information so that publics get correct information.
Yeah, and I suppose what kind of protection do you think journalists equally need at this time? Because I can imagine a worrying trend of the media being bashed by these different political parties ahead of elections is imminent. So at the center are the journalists. These are the storytellers, and I can imagine cyberbullying, you know, threats or even litigation against them at this time can equally be expected. How can they and their work be protected at this moment?
Well, you know, it's really up to the media companies. It comes with the territory that journalists have to be robust, have to accept criticism, and have to take it on the chin. But at the same time, journalists also need protection. You can't have journalists going out to cover things and having their cameras stolen and their cell phones stolen, and communities bashing them with stones and stuff, because journalism is part of our democracy. And you know, it's protected within the Constitution. So we need media companies to also take responsibility for the fact that they're sending their journalists out into areas where it's, you know, it's always going to be risky. It's like that all over the world. It's like that in South Africa too. And so, you know, we need these protections. Cyberbullying, especially in terms of cyber misogyny and hatred of women online, it comes in so many various guises. And women are particularly vulnerable because of threats of rape and murder, and doxing and trolling. And that's a real concern in South Africa at the moment. It's a concern all over the world, but it's quite rife here with journalists, women journalists who are in particular in the political space. And then we've had, of course, the slap case of the strategic illegal, you know, against public participation of Karen Moon. And that is also a worrying thing, because that can't become a precedent if the former President Jacob Zuma wins that case.
Well, we'll leave it there, and I appreciate you, of course, talking to me this morning. Glenda Daniels, Associate Professor of Media Studies at Wits University and Sanef's Gauteng convenor. Thank you so much for your time right here on NewsLink.